Y'all know what time it is. It's the Endoscope podcast with your boy Joshua M. Hicks, senior writer for War Media, and obviously this is a special edition because of two things. One, we're quarantining, so everything is special when you're doing quarantine. I mean, look at me, I got a mini fro going on. I used to have a flat top. This mother's turned into a mini fro. Still look kind of good in the meantime. That's to carry me over until my next haircut. But who cares about all that right now? Because right now I got a special guest. This special guest is a multiple freelance reporter, writer. She's been on everything. ESPN, the Undefeated, FIBA, SB Nation, you name it. She's the real deal. And not to mention, she is very gorgeous. I just have to put that out there. So with that being said, everybody give it up for Greydy Diaz. Miss Diaz, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Thank you for coming on. I know you're a very busy person. You're doing your thing, traveling all over, being part of FIBA and everything. So I know you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're making your bread. So I appreciate you for taking the time to come on my
Thank
show.
you.
I really appreciate that. And let's just start off with your career. Cause like we just mentioned before, you're doing some big things. You've been doing some traveling and everything. So talk about how did your career really jump off and get started into what you're doing right now?
Well, it's funny because what I'm doing right now is actually my second career. My first career was actually on the business side of sports at ESPN. Like that was my first job. I was in Bristol, Connecticut, which is the headquarters. And I would say after about 3.5 years of my business job, I realized that I wanted to do something different. So I knew that I had to make a change and bet on myself. So I decided to just start freelancing full time. And I realized that, I do like storytelling. I do like, being at arenas. I do like interviewing. So I made the conscious effort while I was at ESPN working my business job to connect with people throughout the company and also even ask if I could write while I was there doing my business job. I would write on the side for them. And that helped me when I was ready to leave and to quit my job to pursue other things. So that's how my career kind of got started. It was just like it was just after a while of doing my business job, I realized that I'm not fully happy and I feel like it's time. I'm young. I don't have any like major responsibilities, any kids or anything major. So I knew that I had to bet on myself.
Well, shout out to Team No Kids because we got no kids over here too, and shout out to the young people because we young out here too. We doing our thing. But you said you weren't happy. Like, was this always something that you did? Like when you first started off in your first career, as you mentioned, did you actually think this was something you wanted to do for your rest of your life? Was this did things just change? Like, what made you want to drastically change careers like that?
I just realized that I felt like I wasn't challenged today working on the business side. I felt like I didn't want to be working in a cube every day. It felt very confined. And I'm the type of person where I feel like I I don't want to feel stuck. And it was just, I mean, it was a long time coming. I knew pretty early on that that wasn't a role that I wanted to do for a long time, but I didn't know that I wanted to be a journalist, to be honest. I just knew that I wanted to try. I knew that, going into, writing and stuff, I knew that I wasn't a great writer. So I think I was more attracted to the the opportunity to challenge myself to do something that I knew I wasn't good at. So I think I'm, that opportunity kind of intrigued me a bit. And I mean, I would say that, in time things become a bit easier, but I knew that it was going to be a challenge, which is why I was just like, you know what? I think I want to write.
Okay, well that's great. That's what's up because I mean, first of all, congrats to you for even taking that leap. That's a huge leap coming from an office area to literally be out there in the field. That's a completely different environment. So for you to make that leap, you kudos to you. But at the same time, you're very gifted at what you do. I paid attention to some of your work, especially as of recent, where you talking about producing and writing with FIBA. You over here in 5 day bubbles, like you just can't, like the NBA just did. So it's like so talk about how did you get into FIBA and the reporting that you did, and how it transitions to your most recent experience, which is covering one of the Olympic national teams. That's going to be taking place in that FIBA circuit this upcoming Olympic season in the summer.
Absolutely. So I always try to tell people that networking is so important. Relationship building is crucial, especially in our industry. And our the sports industry, entertainment industry is very small. So the way I actually got my opportunity with FIBA was one of my friends at ESPN posted a feature that he did with a player, and I believe I liked the post. And the guy who actually produced the video feature was at ESPN at the time, and he ended up leaving to go to FIBA for an opportunity. And after me liking that post, he, I think, added me on Instagram. And then from there, I reached out just saying, hey, I'm Greydy Diaz. This is what I do, blah, blah, blah. And then I want to say maybe a month later, he got the job with FIBA, and he reached out to me and was like, hey, I'm now at FIBA. And I was like, oh my gosh, like if you have anything, I would love to do anything with you guys. And we kind of just continued talking, and via DM, which is, the power of social media is so incredible, because I never met the guy. I just kind of pitched myself and what I could do and what I was interested in. And, when he found an opportunity, he thought of me. So that's how, me doing a lot of work for FIBA over this whole, throughout this whole pandemic kind of happened.
That's what's up. That's what's up. I understand. That's what happens when you shoot your shot in DMs. Like that's what happens when you shoot your shot. Everyone listening right now, please by all opportunities shoot your shot. Because let's be serious, that's how we connected. I shot my shot in
Absolutely.
DMs, and I was like, "Yo, I see you doing some good stuff. You want to help a brother out by coming on my show?" And next, you're on my show. So everyone, it's okay, rejection or not, to shoot your shot in DMs, because 9 times out of 10, you will get some form of response, and at least the
Absolutely.
response is normally positive. So by all means, everybody, especially freelancers like Greydy here, shoot your shots. Slide in the DMs, okay? Slide in the DMs. And now, but transition from the DM aspect. Now you've been doing, like you said, you just mentioned, you're doing work at FIBA with FIBA, and you were just in a bubble, literally in a bubble out of the country. Talk about what that experience was like, especially since we know people that have been in the actual bubble with all the major sports, especially the NBA, with that being such a huge success. Talk about what was your bubble experience like, covering the one of the FIBA national Olympic basketball teams.
Yeah, so FIBA had multiple, I mean, throughout the world, they had bubbles going on at the same time. But FIBA Americas, which is the region that I focus on, they had quite, like, I think they had three bubbles going on at the same time, one in Argentina, one in the Dominican Republic, and one in the US, actually in Indiana. And up until I think a week before I ended up leaving, I didn't know if I was going to go to Indiana for the USA bubble or the Dominican Republic. And I was equally excited for both. And I think it actually worked out, with me going to the Dominican Republic bubble. And oh my goodness, it was an experience. I was there for 5 days, got tested, all that, and I was the only reporter there. I was FIBA's reporter and the only media member actually in that bubble. So it was a very small bubble, no fans, and it was so cool to have the access that I had. There were times where, you couldn't do certain things because of protocol. So there were a lot of rules in place, to keep things safe. But man, it was an experience. And unfortunately, while I was there, I actually haven't told anybody this, but I tested positive for the coronavirus while I was there. That it's actually going to be coming out in my part 2 video vlog that I did while I was there. So I tested positive, and then I got retested and it came out negative. So I had the false positive. So it actually came at a time where I couldn't go to the games. So I was luckily I got interviews done before I got that positive test back. but that having that positive test while I was there meant that I couldn't go to the 2 games that I was there for. So I had to, be isolated in my room, and I was I was nervous because I didn't know. I was thankfully in contact with doctors and all of the FIBA personnel. They were making sure I was okay, and I had no symptoms. I was like, this is crazy. And they were just like, they made it seem like I was going to be, it was a 5-day bubble, but they made it seem like I was going to be isolated until I got a negative test. So I was like, oh my gosh, does this mean I'm not going home soon? Like, I have no idea what's going on. And to be honest, just being isolated for a few days made me realize how difficult it is to, number one, be confined to yes, I was in the nice room, all of that, but to be confined to 4 walls, it it does a lot to you. There were times where I was like, I don't know how people do this for a long period of time. Like, this is not good for you. So that's news that nobody actually knows. So you heard it here first. but
In the
but
scope.
but no, thank goodness my test came back negative, and I kind of had a feeling that it could be negative, a negative, like a false positive test. But I again, I had so much support while I was there. Even the players were hitting me up every day just saying, "How are you feeling? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm good." But overall, it was a really unique and great experience, although I didn't get to complete all of the work that I set out to do there.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. I'm just obviously I'm glad that you're safe, and I'm glad that you're
Thank you.
okay. With your health and everything, and that's what the point. That's the point of in the scope. You get the scope of different lenses. This lens just brought you dropping breaking news. That's what this is all about. And everybody listening right now, that if you just heard this breaking news, it came from Miss Greydy Diaz. Um, Grady, obviously now that you've had those type of encounters and that experience, has there ever been a moment in time where you felt kind of that isolation as the minority reporter? You know what I mean? Like when you covering different games, when you're going to different arenas, you might stand out as the one lone reporter, especially when it comes to professional men's sports as a female reporter. Talk about what experiences have you had when it comes to those type of surroundings within your career?
That's so real. So every time I step into a Wizards locker room, I'm one of only a few women and one of only a few women of color. So for me, it's always very eye-opening. You're just like, wow, we've come so far, but then again, we really haven't come that far, I realize. And to be sometimes the only woman or one of only just like two or three, it still doesn't sit with me well. But at the same time, it encourages me to continue going and to continue to reach back and help whoever I can, because people a lot of women, especially Black women, have helped me. And I credit my career to Black women putting me on, to opportunities, accepting my pitches, holding my camera for me whenever I needed. So I I think of that all the time, when I'm in spaces where I'm just like, wow, this kind of feels lonely, you know? And I try to use it as motivation, honestly.
That's real. That's real. I mean, as a black journalist myself, I mean, I know I can relate to what it means to being the only brother sometimes in a media room, or so there's a very small group of us, in that same locker room covering black sports. That's a real thing. And if like you said, it's uncomfortable. It gets uncomfortable, and it blows my mind how you have a representation of a league, especially leagues like the NFL and the NBA, where it's predominantly black, and you have barely any black reporters that cover
It's
these
true.
teams.
It's true. And I feel like I also try to use it as an advantage, because a lot of the time there aren't people that look like you in the locker room. So I might be able to connect with somebody in the locker room who is brown or black before they're able to connect with anybody else. So I sometimes use that to my advantage, and I'll just pull up on them and say, "Hey, can I talk to you on the way out?" and they're kind of stunned, and for the most part they say yes, and they know that I think they have an idea of how difficult it can be for somebody who looks like me to just be in this space. So I think they respect it. So, I just again try to see the positive and use it to my advantage if I can.
That's true. That's very true. And I know you had one of those type of experiences with former Wizard now John Wall, who just got traded to the Houston Rockets for Russell Westbrook. So talk about what was it like interviewing John Wall? What was it like having conversation with him?
John Wall is somebody that what let me back up a little bit. So people always ask me what is John Wall like? People just I feel like not many people have been able to see him like somebody who's, been close to the Wizards as a media member. And I always tell people that he has a very big heart. The amount of things I've seen him do in the community is unreal. And a lot of the times there aren't cameras around. Yes, there have been many times where cameras are around, whether it's for, whether he's giving meals or helping with rent assistance, things like that. But he's, I've seen him do things for people without cameras. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like he's a good dude. And it's it sounds like he didn't want the trade, that he didn't ask for the trade. So to put to be working for an organization for 10 years and to kind of have it end the way it did is a little sad. And I actually just texted one of my editors a few days ago and I was just like, is it me or does this feel like a sad moment? And he's like, no, it's a sad moment. It's a sad moment for DC, and I'm actually very happy for John, and I absolutely wish him continued success, and I hope he kills it in Houston. But I just I feel like he was injured for the past essentially 2 seasons, and we didn't get to hear from him a lot, but he did make a tremendous impact in the community, which will never be forgotten. And he has even said that he's going to continue to give back to his communities, and one of them being the DC area, which is so powerful and so awesome of him. And just to see him with his son, I saw him a lot with his son while he had his injury. He would still come to the games, obviously sit on the bench, but he would also bring his son to the games. And just to see the way he interacted with his son and loved on his son was really beautiful. And it's like DC got to see, a 19-year-old kid, they got to see him grow up, so from from a young man to now a father, which is so beautiful. And I'm really excited to see him on the court. I heard that, just a few weeks ago when he was in Miami, he was looking really good. And I actually talked to a player who was actually playing against him in Miami, and I was just like, hey, what did John Wall look like? You think he's ready? And he was like, he's more than ready. He looks good.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how that combination is going to work, especially once they finally figure out what they're going to do with James Harden and the fact that he got to reunite with Boogie Cousins, his former teammate
Yes.
and good friend from Kentucky. Man, that's going to be very interesting to see because they both have similar paths. Like they're both trying to get back to stardom. They're trying to get back to the players that they were and be better versions of
Mhm.
themselves. And for them to go on this journey together and wind up in the same spot, I'm very intrigued to see how that's going to work out.
Me too. I think I just read earlier that James Harden has to get, I think, six negative tests before he can go back to practicing or something like that. So, oh man, Houston seems a little bit messy right now.
Yeah, Houston has a little bit of a problem,
Yeah.
but as a DC person, that's
Mhm.
covered the Wizards, you got Russell Westbrook now in town. Before I get to Russell Westbrook, I have to ask this question to people that have at least been around the Wizards locker room. A lot of media members have made this narrative that Bradley Beal and John Wall don't get along. They don't like each other. as someone that's been up close, I have to ask, is that really true? Like, how much truth was it to those rumors that came up regarding the relationship of Bradley Beal and John Wall?
I don't believe them. I've seen both of them together. I've seen Bradley Beal at John Wall's birthday parties. I've seen John Wall at Bradley Beal's son's birthday parties. If they weren't cool, do you think that would even happen? Because at the end of the day, they're coworkers. They don't have to be anything other than that. They don't have to see each other outside of work at all. But I was just on Bradley Beal's press conference. I think it was last Friday, his media press conference, and he so many times in his press conference said, my brother, in reference to John Wall. He said, our brotherhood will continue, our relationship will continue. So for Bradley to say all those things in a media press conference, I could tell it was real. And he also, he did that Instagram post just saying, thank you for everything. And he talked, even in that press conference, he talked about their bond, which was formed in high school. So we're talking about a very long-term friendship, brotherhood. So it's, for me, I never bought into that narrative, never did, because you know how the media can be. People just will take something and run with it. And at the end of the day, if they did have conflict at any time, what brothers don't, what friends don't. So at the end of the day, John Wall did go back to the Wizards practice facility before he left to Houston. I think the day before he left to Houston to say goodbye to his former team, which I thought spoke volumes. And I'll never buy into that story, those rumors, because I've been able to see them together. And again, for them to go to family parties and all that, I'm sorry, if I'm beefing with somebody or if I'm not cool with somebody, we're just not going to each other's families' houses and parties. It's just not going to happen, right?
That's true. That's very true, especially when it comes to bro code. That's part of bro code. You jacking that up, man. If
Right.
that was the case. So that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. But now Bradley Beal has a new running mate. It's Russell Westbrook, and I'm kind of intrigued how this is gonna go. Just because Russell Westbrook does have his experience with his first head coach and Scott Brooks.
Right.
They've always had a good rapport from what I've heard reporting wise. They've always had a good relationship, and it still stands to this day. So for the transition to make, at least on Russell Westbrook's end, it kind of makes sense to make that transition as smooth as possible. But now he's playing with a Bradley Beal who we know can fill it up.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah, he can fill it up, lights out. Should have been an automatic bid for All-Star last year, but he got snubbed. So it's like, how do you think this new pairing in Washington, D.C. is going to turn out for the Wizards? Because obviously, the choice has been made. They're building around Bradley Beal, but having someone like a Russell Westbrook who is, very ball dominant, he has to have the ball in his hands to create, and he's not really the greatest shooter. How do you think that pairing can work out?
I'm actually looking forward to this pairing a lot. I think it might make Wizards basketball a little bit more fun, a little bit more interesting. And unfortunately, we won't be able to be in the arena, but I feel like it might, if we were in the arena, I think it would have drawn a lot more fans, because there were many times last season where I was just like, doesn't feel like a lot of people are here. What's going on? Especially being in such a big city. But I'm very, very much so looking forward to it. I don't know that Bradley Beal will average 30 a game, with Russ being there, of course. But I think it sounds, from what I've heard, it sounds like they're gonna work well together. And I think they both can complement each other as long as they think about the team. And I think that's so important. I hope Russ kind of buys in. And I think he will, honestly. I think this could be It's crazy because I would have never ever imagined Russell Westbrook in a Wizards jersey. So number one, that is so weird to me. Like, it stinks that we can't be in the arena because all the drip that we'd be able to see pre-game would be crazy and post-game. But honestly, I think he's gonna bring some fun, some electricity and to the games, and I think he's gonna make Wizards basketball kind of fun to watch this year. So I'm looking forward to it. Uh, so we'll see.
Is this Wizards team a playoff team in the East?
That's a great question. I mean, I think they can be, but they're gonna have to turn it all the way up if they wanna be a playoff team. So we'll see. I mean, I feel like of course, everybody's making their preseason predictions and all that, but it's gonna be. They have what? How many games is this year? Is it 72?
Yeah, 72.
72. It's still a lot of games. So there's a lot that could happen, a lot of opportunity, but I I think they could be. I think if you had to ask me and I had to give you an answer, I think they could be. But again, they got to turn it all the way up.
Yeah, and I think this year also helps them just because I think last year they finished, I want to say a 10th seed potentially in the
Hmm.
East. I think they finished a 10th seed in the East. And
Yeah.
in this year's playoff, that's a play-in game for them. So technically,
Hmm.
with the new playoff season, taking place,
Yeah.
the new format for this year,
Yeah.
they could be part of that play-in tournament like we saw in the bubble, and they can, if now that you got Russ there, and if he can stay healthy and Bradley Beal can stay healthy and that team can stay healthy as a whole, they could fight for that final spot in the Eastern Conference. It'll be like you said, it'll be very interesting to see, especially now you get to see pregame Russ with his absolute mad drip game in pregame and postgame interviews. Everybody listening right,
Absolutely.
everybody listening right now, you're listening to Greydy Diaz. Um, Transition real briefly to just the NBA as a whole. I want to ask you this because obviously you got the FIBA perspective as well as the NBA perspective. The Olympics for the summer 2021, I believe that from the last time we talked, is the day right after the NBA finals.
Bruh. I'm so I'm I don't understand why it's one day after. I don't know how worse that could be. Why? I have so many questions. Why? Because that's and number one, I don't know where we're gonna be pandemic wise then, but I'm sure there's still gonna be a lot of precautions and protocols. So thinking of the Olympics next year, I don't know. Like, I'm just like, number one, who's gonna want to go? Number two, people who are in the playoffs and the finals, whatever, they might be like, nah, I'm good, I'm tired, like, not gonna risk it. So for me, it's really unfortunate, the timing of it. I was bummed because I was just like, oh, that's gonna absolutely affect rosters, 1000%, 1000%. So man, I would love to start asking players, given the opportunity, would you be on that Olympic team that ends one day after the NBA season?
Yeah, and what we know, at least we know one of the players that's already made it known he won't be is Damian Lillard. He already made it known, like, look here, bro, if I make the playoffs or if I go deep into the playoffs and we got the Olympics, I'm out. And that's a guy that even though he may not have played on the huge biggest stage in the
Mhm.
Olympics, Damian Lillard is Damian Lillard. I mean, if you don't have
Right.
any other superstar, you got D. Lil on your court, you're gonna have a really good chance of taking that gold. So
And and that's a big stage, when I think of the Olympics, that's the biggest to me, that's the biggest stage in the world. So for players to kind of be like, nah, just like, oh man, really? Like, ooh. But I get it, to have the NBA season end that late, man, it stinks.
and one person that we also have to really consider, because LeBron James, he made it known, a couple of years ago when he was hurt, just started his tenure at the Lakers. I think he made it known that, I didn't play in the last Olympic, but I want to play in this one. And the fact that we got the pandemic going on, they're about to start a season 72 days after they just won the title.
Right.
And what if he makes another finals run? He's going to the finals, and the next day he got to hop on a jet to fly to wherever the Olympics are this year.
Pause. Let's pause. While I think that, of course, that's a huge argument to be made, I think this is a great opportunity to talk about the WNBA and how WNBA players at times go overseas within 24 hours of playing their last WNBA game. That happens. So it would be a lot on their bodies. I understand, your body is everything. But just know we have women out here, professional WNBA players who are doing it. So
that's true. That's very true. Shout out to the WNBA for constantly playing 24/7 basketball in and out the country. That's a very good point. That's not being brought up. That's what WNBA players have to do, literally, just to survive half the time. To get other streams of income, because the WNBA is not nearly at the level where the NBA is financially, and economically. Right. So they have to make those big moves, and for them to do that consistently year after year after year, you have to give them mad props for the work ethic that they're putting in just to survive and take care of their families. So I agree with you. If the NBA players, even if they make the playoffs but don't go as deep into the playoffs like a final runs perspective, you could take a couple weeks off and then hop on a jet to fly over. I mean, that's the least you can do, considering, even though the NBA player doesn't have that long of a season compared to the NBA, they are constantly doing that on a yearly basis. So that's a very good argument that's unfortunately not being brought up.
Absolutely.
So now that the Olympic component is taken care of, and we know that we got to look out for those type of things, let's pause on that future aspect and bring it back to the NBA, because the NBA is about to start literally this weekend. I think games start Friday for preseason, right? So far within this off season that's took place, from what you've known, because the NBA, we they firework in every off season fireworks. So much has taken place, from trades, free agent signings, investigations. I mean, come on, bro. You're getting trade investigations. We went from an NBA bubble where people were getting disciplined for Postmates and having women and people in their rooms, in Magic City, going to Magic City for hot wings. I mean, the NBA is a roller coaster for storylines, but to go from all of that even into this offseason and have the fireworks that it had, it's a lot took place. So for you, what was the outstanding headlines that took place for you that really made you go like, whoa, as we prepare for this upcoming season?
Ooh. Man, there were so many. I mean, free agency, as you said, was out of control. I just remember every day just seeing my phone light up to just notifications about who's getting traded, how much money, and one thing that always like surprises me is like how big the contracts are. Some of these max contracts are crazy, and so I mean, definitely the Donovan Mitchells with those huge contracts, they're incredible. So I mean, one of the free agency stories which we recently touched upon was, John Wall and the Wizards, and I just felt like I was so confused. I was like, what's going on? Did he want to get traded? It just sounded like there was it sounded like people weren't being honest, and not for nothing, I listened into some press conferences with people from the organization, and to me, not everything has been adding up. I've been looking at facial expressions to see, you can kind of tell if sometimes you can tell people are lying or if people aren't telling the full truth. So yeah, I feel like there's more to that story that we don't know. But I think someday we're gonna find out, because to me it just sounds like we didn't get all the information.
That would be a very interesting ESPN 30 for 30.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because I think it caused a lot of people to talk, especially on Twitter. Like DC was, I felt like they were pretty devastated. Think about it. Somebody is there for so long, who's done so much for your community, who's done a lot for the organization, who's played through injuries. This man was playing through injuries that he should not have played through. At like he should not have. And he put his body on the line for the Wizards. And but yeah, 30 for 30 would be crazy on that.
I don't know, maybe you can participate in it. You
I
got
would
your
I
peoples
would
back
love
there.
to. Honestly, one of my goals is to get involved in, documentaries and stuff. So, man, if the opportunity comes, absolutely I'm on it. On it. Drop everything. I'm on it.
I feel that. And speaking of, goals and dreams and what you're trying to aspire, what do you see yourself as the next steps of where you want to take your career? What are the next steps you want to get yourself into in far out to the future, and then even in the near? What are some upcoming projects you may be working on for people that can really continue to tune into your work?
So I'll be continuing to do stuff for FIBA. Maybe I'll be at another bubble soon. I don't know. Hopefully. But honestly, I would love to be involved with the Olympics because for me, that's the biggest stage. NBA is obviously a huge stage, but when you think about representing countries and taking the best players from every country is so incredible to me. So I would one day love to be involved with the Olympics in whatever capacity. And I know in 2028 the Olympics are going to be in LA, so that's home. You know what I mean? So at the same time, I have to travel, so I'm cool with wherever it is, but definitely be involved with the Olympics. I would love to be involved in some documentaries and producing and even more interviewing. A lot down the road, I would love to do like primetime interviews. People like Diane Sawyer, Rachel Nichols. Well, Diane Sawyer she wasn't in sports, but she's an incredible interviewer. So I study people like Rachel Nichols who interview people all the time and do these big interviews. Maria Taylor has done some huge ones, and I'm working towards it. I'm working towards it.
I feel that we all working towards that, and by all means, from the outside looking in, you're definitely well on your way. You're doing great things out there, and for people to continue to follow your work, how's the best way to give the audience your social media, give them the best avenues to research and continue to follow up on what you're doing?
Sure. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, but I would say I'm on Instagram and Facebook the most. And no, Instagram and Twitter the most. So you can definitely catch me first and last name. You'll be able to find me, Greydy Diaz.
And that is Grady with an EYDY,
Yep.
correct?
So GREYDY and then Diaz, DIAZ.
That's what I'm talking about. And everybody listen, you can also follow me on social media at that guy Josh Hicks on Instagram and on Twitter at jhicks042. And follow War Media on Instagram and Twitter. We got a lot of great stuff continuing to come your way. Podcasts, columns, you name it. Because we Chicago. So we're gonna cover everything Chicago as well as the national stages as well. And to have someone on the East Coast come stop by in the Midwest, you already know
Absolutely.
it's a great connection. So Grady, I thank you for coming on my show. I really appreciate it. Anything you got going on, if you may need some extra insight, just think about your boy one time for the one time. I mean, I'm here for you.
Okay.
But by all means, I gotta have you come back on my show, especially
I
with
would
everything
love to
going on.
anytime. Anytime. You were so great. And anytime you need me, just let me know and we'll make it work.
Most definitely. And hopefully when the pandemic comes down, gets down and I can do more traveling like I want to.
Yeah.
DC's out as one of the top cities on my list. So we gotta reconnect when I come out there.
DC's dope.
Yep. I got family and all that out there. So it's gonna be a
Perfect.
multi-layered trip. So I
Hey,
definitely when I come
perfect.
visit, let's link up.
Yes, let me know. Definitely.
I got you. Thank you so much, Grady. Really appreciate you. Continue doing the great stuff that you do. And we'll catch up soon.
Sounds good. Take care. Thank you so much.
All right.